Okay, so I got 3 people on. All righty, and I am waiting for 2 more, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get us started. And again, that link is in the chat, and if you need it, for whatever reason you get kicked out, just send me a private chat and I will drop that link for you guys again. Okay, so let's talk about what we came here to do. We are here to talk about how do we create relevant, transformative, and realistic learning experiences for our students. Okay, so from this session, you guys are going to be able to walk away with the key characteristics of a multicultural and transformative lesson. And then after this webinar, my goal is for you to be able to take back what you're learning today to your classrooms, to your lesson designing process, and evaluate your lessons through a lens of multiculturalism and culture responsive pedagogy, inclusivity, just to make sure that you are reaching and teaching all students. So a transformative lesson is an inquiry-based lesson. And so our compelling question for today is, what are the key characteristics of a real transformative lesson? Okay, so before we jump in, let's go ahead and get our technology set up. So I've already dropped the Nearpod link for you. And so before we move on, I want to make sure that we are able to engage with the Nearpod as well as see each other and all of our smiling faces. So if you can put your Zoom and gallery view so that way we can see all the smiling faces and build that community, and then split your screen to have Nearpod set up on the other side. So when you have your screen set up where you have Nearpod in one window to your right and Zoom to the left, go ahead and give me a thumbs up so I know we can move on. Awesome. Kathy has it. Thank you. Got it, Lindsay?
I'm having trouble. I'm on an iPad, and so getting the split screen is giving me issues.
Okay, well, I can drop the link again, or you can just
I can open one in my phone. Is what I'll do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that everybody can see. Lindsay has it. Allison, is there any way I can support you?
Well, I'm also on an iPad, so
Okay.
I'm going to try to switch to my laptop.
Okay, just let me know how I can support you. And if I need to drop the link or give you a code again, I can definitely do that, okay?
Okay, I think I'll be able to do it, but I might have to enter your meeting again.
Yes, that'll work perfectly. That will work.
That's me a second time.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so now that we have our technology set up, let's go ahead. I want to make sure that you guys are able to walk away here with any notes that you want to take from this session. So with Nearpod, there is this cool little feature where you can take notes, and then at the end of the session, when you select the email option, it will email you all of the slides and all of the notes from today's session, okay? You can also use the feature to upload it to your Google Drive or have it to your Microsoft One account, but I have found that the email is the most effective way, okay? So in this space today, remember, I want to make sure that we are modeling, or that I'm modeling for you, the same thing that I expect teachers to do in their classrooms with students. So we're going to be engaging in a variety of different ways, which we'll talk about shortly. But our engagement norms, in which all of you guys are doing a great job doing, is keeping our mics on mute throughout the session, but let's keep our cameras on, because seeing smiling faces, as I emphasize, is the way we build community. So mics off, cameras on. If you need to step away for any reason, feel free to turn off your camera and then just shoot me a private chat to let me know that you stepped away, so that I know that you're no longer behind the screen and I won't call on you, okay? And then we're going to use a variety of different engagement strategies, some low lift engagement today to make sure that we are interacting with each other. And so I will often ask you guys to send a private chat. And if I say private chat, then you just send me, make sure it's on private, and it'll say in red private, and you send me a response. I will do public chat where the large group will be able to see your responses. Then I'll also use cold calling, unmuting, and sharing your responses. Okay. But before we jump into the content today, let me check in with you guys. How are you doing? So I want you to go ahead and use the public chat feature to just give me one word to describe how you are feeling this morning, how you're doing this morning. All right, so we got good, great, relieved, slow. Yeah, I had a morning where I was trying to get the kids settled and trying to just make sure I'm prepared, relaxed. Okay, great. So we are all in a upbeat and welcoming spirit, so that's good. So before we get started, and really jumping in, let me just want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Alexis Terry, which some of you guys have either seen me through social media, some of you guys have worked with me, some of you guys have seen me in the Twisted Teaching features through Alice Keeler. I am an educator and a consultant. I'm a social studies educator, as well as I teach a social studies teacher preparation course. I am the founder of Twisted Teaching Educational Consulting Company, where our whole goal is to build teachers' capacity and effectiveness as culturally responsive educators who are capable of reaching and teaching all students. I am the author of the book Real Love: Strategies for Reaching Students When They See No Way Out, which that is going to be one of the upcoming book studies for Twisted Teaching. And so I will talk to you guys about that later. And then I'm also a doctoral student. And so in addition to being a mom, a wife, an educator, a consultant, I am working on a PhD with an emphasis in urban education. And my research interests include culturally responsive teaching, teaching preparation, reality pedagogy, and then culturally responsive and culturally relevant teaching with technology. So that is me. And I am going to soon give us opportunity to learn about ourselves. Okay. So let's talk about why we are here today. I was in a webinar last week with the Gloria Ladson-Billings. And if you don't know much about Gloria Ladson-Billings, when we talk about culturally relevant teaching, Gloria Ladson-Billings, she is the founder. She is the one who coined the term culturally relevant teaching. And she said it best. She said that we think that we are in one pandemic, but we are actually currently in 4 pandemics. We're in 4 pandemics. We have the first pandemic that is caused by COVID-19. Then we have the second pandemic, which is the racial and civil unrest that we have seen ravage throughout our country. We are also experiencing an economic pandemic where millions of Americans have lost their jobs and they're literally living day to day. And we're also witnessing a climate pandemic where the weather is getting crazier each day. Fires are burning down my beautiful home state of California. And then there are also deadly hurricanes each week. Like, we have made it into the Greek alphabet. And so while all of this is going on, this happened. And I'm sorry, I jumped out of the Nearpod. So let me jump back in there. So while all of this is going on, what's also going on is virtual learning or virtual teaching as a result of the pandemic. And so, considering everything that is going on, we're doing a great job. We are doing a great job, and educators across the world are killing it. Learning is happening. But there is a sad reality about the impact of the pandemic on teaching. And that sad reality is this: the consequence of the pandemic in teaching. Every week you see something on the news, and as we're closing out the first semester, you see it more and more that students across America are failing at least one class. They're not showing up. They are missing. Gloria Ladson-Billings last week, she said that we may all be in the same boat, but we are not journeying this storm, or we may all be in the same storm, but we're not journeying this storm in the same boat. Some of us have not missed a beat, right? We have jobs, we have food on our table, our families are healthy. We don't know anyone directly impacted by COVID, but then some of us are hanging on by a limb. They are literally traveling this storm on a limb, and the next big wave is going to take them under. The next big wave is going to take them under. And our students, they are a part of this storm that we're traveling in. And they're sitting there and they're watching their families and how their families ride out this storm. And some of our students have had to step up. I can speak personally. Right now, my nieces and nephews are living in a motel because they were recently evicted. And while my sister has to go out and work so that way she can keep them in that hotel until she finds housing, my nieces and nephews have had to, the older two have had to step up and watch their siblings while my sister goes out and works and looks for a job. And so the question we have to ask ourselves is, why would our students care? The ones who are not showing up, why? Why would they even care to show up? What is our classroom and our learning and the experiences that we're providing in our classrooms doing for them right now? Because that's what a lot of our students are focused on and a lot of our families are focused on, is the right now. You guys are all here because I feel like as we wrap up the fall semester and we transition into the spring, you have hope. You have hope that I can do something, that I can transform something, because it's easy to point the finger and look outside of our classrooms and say, well, the parents are not doing this or the community is not doing this. But you guys are looking internally and saying, what can I do? You're being solution oriented to see how can you effectively reach and teach every student. Okay. And so despite all that we have been facing, I am confident and I am encouraged by the fact that meaning learning experiences can happen and will happen. Okay. But before we really jump in to the meat of today, let's start off with a meet and greet so that way we will know who is in the room and who are we connecting with. Okay. So we all have something to celebrate. We have all had a teaching win this semester, whether it was getting that one student who you never thought would show up to check into one Zoom session. You had a teaching win. Whether it be helping that one parent figure out how to even log into Seesaw, you've had a win. We have all had a teacher win. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to take about 15 seconds to think about and identify your teaching win. What has been your teaching win so far this school year? And once you've gotten that teaching win in your head, go ahead and drop into the chat for me. Got it. Okay. Kathy's got it. Lindsay's got it. All right. Catherine's got it. Tina's got it. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to place you guys into breakout rooms for a quick turn and talk. So the way a quick turn and talk works in Zoom is you open the breakout room and you close the breakout room. Okay. So when we go into the breakout rooms, I'm going to open it up. I'm going to give you about a minute and then I'm going to close it. So when I start closing it, it is going to be on a 1-minute countdown. Do not click return to the main session, because what's going to happen is when you return to the main session, you're going to sit here, look at me. I'm going to look at you, you look at me. I'll engage you in conversation while you're here, but it'll be better if you have all of the time in your breakout room. Okay. If you run into any issues, you can always send me a private chat and I can jump into the room and help you. So again, we're going to spend about 3 minutes in the breakout rooms, do a little turn and talk, and we're going to share our teacher wins. Okay. So I am going ahead and I am opening up the breakout rooms for you. And I shall see you back in 3 minutes. So go ahead and hit accept when it pops up. All right. Welcome back. I see smiles on faces. I love smiles on faces. So that tells me that you guys were celebrating. So, what I want you guys to do is if you want to talk about not your teacher win, but the teacher win of someone that you met in the breakout room and that you want to celebrate them and give them a shout out, go ahead and drop your name in the chat so that I know that you want to speak, right? So, if you want to celebrate your teacher win that you learned about and you want to shout them out, go ahead and drop your name in the chat. All right. Okay, Tina, can you go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us about and who you want to celebrate in their teacher win?
Well, I'd like to celebrate Allison. She's a speech pathologist.
Woo!
And I really thought it was great that in her one-on-one sessions with her students, her parents are also involved now because she's virtual. And I think that this is great that because her students and parents are involved, now the parents are helping the students at home and they now know what to do to help them because the parents can see the strategies she's using. So even though this may have been seen as something not as a positive situation, it has turned to be almost 100% positive because the students are using the strategies both at school and at home. So applause to Allison.
Woo! Allison.
Thanks,
And
Tina.
let me tell you, thank you. I am the parent of a daughter who is receiving speech therapy. And so I appreciate you and the work that you do. Thank you so much. All right. Allison, I'm going to kick it to you since you still have your mic muted. Who do you want to celebrate and give a shout out to?
Well, I want to celebrate Tina because believe it or not, she has 95% of her students coming to class. She's on hybrid and her students are really participating in class, and the students say they know their teachers and their personalities, and the students sound like they love school.
Right now, that is something definitely to celebrate. Woohoo! And yes, later in the session, Tina, you're going to have to drop us some knowledge and tell us what are you doing. That is a great job. Okay, Lindsay, I am kicking it to you. Who do you want to celebrate and
Wow.
give a shout out to?
Well, I was in a breakout room with someone I think might have stepped away. So I'd like to share my own win if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, even before the pandemic, I have the blessing of teaching in a one-to-one school. So I was using technology all day, every day, even when it wasn't required. So I've been able to give an almost seamless transition for my students because we did everything on computers anyway.
Awesome. Yes, 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 yes. That is definitely deserves a round of applause. You guys are doing some great things. And like I said, people think that, oh, students are not learning, they're not engaged, but they are learning and they are engaged. And today, that's what we're really going to focus on. How do we push that learning and push that engagement to the next level? So, one of the things I want to throw out there is a question. So we started off this session with the community building activity. Okay, community building is key to any real lesson. I want you guys to think about this. Why is community building opportunities important and daily community building opportunities important? Think about that. All right, Kathy McCoy, I'm going to call on you. Why are community building opportunities important?
Well, I mean, one of like on Maslow's hierarchy, we all want to feel connected and loved. And so that community building helps those kids kind of have a sense of place of where they belong. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really important. You can't start learning until you know you're loved. So that community building is really, that's first thing you got to do.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kathy, for that insight. I appreciate that. Elizabeth, I'm going to come to you. Elizabeth, in your opinion, why are community building opportunities important? Okay, I think Elizabeth may have stepped away, so I'm going to come back and check in with her. Catherine Ford, I'm going to kick it to you. Why are community building opportunities important?
Well, I think the daily part of it's important too, in that, if the minute they walk in the door, all you're focused is on content, then you haven't shown that you have any concern for what's going on in their lives. And I work in a campus where all my kids are in some kind of traumatic situation of one kind or another, or they wouldn't be on my campus. And so it's really important for me to check in with them. How are you doing? How did last night go? And, they're sharing different things throughout the day, as far as what's going on in their lives. And, I have a particular student that I know won't be there next week because of some things going on in her life. And I won't know until she comes back in January whether things went well or not. But, that connection and that trust that they have to share those things because you have shown how much you care.
Yes, thank you so much. And I like that the two Kathys, you guys both centered the importance of community building to the students' needs and checking in, and students knowing that you are there for them, you're supportive, and that you care. But community building is also key to relationships with students, right? That is our goal. And I like that Kathy McCoy emphasized the fact that you have to Maslow before they can bloom. So a student needs to know that they have that safe space. They are in a trusting and welcoming environment that sees them, that values them, and that affirms them. Relationship building should happen every day, and every lesson should be designed as an opportunity for you to build relationships with students and to create a community in your classroom. Through relationship building, you can learn about students' cultures, their families, their communities, their identities, their interests, their passions, and what's important to them. Building relationships, however, it has to be intentional and it has to be consistent. So it has to happen every day. It cannot be, we build relationships at the beginning of the semester. I know my students know me. I sent home a nice little newsletter. Or Oh, when we check in next semester, we'll spend time building relationship because I have to teach content. I have to get there. It's extremely important again that we are intentional about building these relationships with each and every student so that we can learn who the students are, we can learn what interests them, can learn how they learn and what they need from us to be successful. So it's important now that we are intentional about building relationships more than ever because each and every day students are coming into our classrooms with true issues of concern that hinder their ability to really receive what we are trying to deposit into them. But then also, not only is relationships key to understanding how we can deposit into students, it is also key to understanding what funds of knowledge students hold and possess and what they can teach us and what they can teach their classmates. Okay. And so to ensure that intentional space is created for relationship building, community building activities should be embedded into every class period. Community building activities can occur as a daily icebreaker or a warm up, something tied to the lesson, but community building is a must. So, here are some keys to intentional community building, okay? So, to ensure that we have created this in space that is intentionally designed. One of the things that, and again, it can happen through an icebreaker or a warm up that is specifically tied to a lesson. And community building can also happen through lessons that offer collaboration and opportunities for students to work together. But with your community building, what I want you to be intentional about is first including diverse voices, okay? Not always calling on the same students to share. And with that, sometimes community building can happen via a back channel, right? It's as long as you're giving every student in the classroom the opportunity to share their voice. If you guys notice, one of the strategies that I used to welcome you guys into the space was having you put your name in the chat so that way I know that you're here and you want to speak. You can also engage all students in the community by having them private chat you in a virtual space how they're going on. But no matter what tactic you use, you just want to create that space where students know that they have that they are welcome and that they're being affirmed in that space. You want to build moments for personal sharing. Like I talked to you guys about what's going on with my sister. I want you to know that, and our students should know that we are human. We are human and we have interests, we have passions, we have dreams. We get excited about sometimes what's happening on social media too. We are impacted by what's happening in the news. We want to laugh. So they want to know that we are human, and community building allows us to share that. And so sometimes without centering yourself and being dominant, it is okay to share personal things about yourself. Through your community building, provide praise, encourage your students so that way they know that they are going to be welcome and affirmed when they do step up and share. We want to also be vulnerable because modeling, vulnerability is the root of everything. Vulnerability, when you model vulnerability and you show that it's okay to not always know the answers, it's okay to fail, it's okay to have anxiety, then students see that, okay, I can do this. And they're more open and willing to take risks. When you engage in community building, infuse your own style or humor into it. Again, we want to show students that we are human. And then you want to seek feedback. Okay, ask your students. We're going to talk about cognitive dialogues. Ask your students, how am I doing with building community? And trust me, if you ask, they will tell you. It's like if you build it, they will come. If you ask, they will tell you. So from community building, your role is to connect with students, but also to observe and learn about students. Community building gives you the information that you need to engage your students in a culturally relevant, culturally responsive, and realistic manner. Okay. And so that's going to be the next thing that we talk about. That is the next core component of designing a real lesson. But before we discuss culturally relevant teaching, culturally responsive teaching, or reality pedagogy, I want to gauge your interest in your understanding of culturally relevant, culturally responsive based pedagogical practices. So I'm going to drop into the Nearpod a survey, and the survey is just going to gauge your entry point. Okay, so what is your entry point in regards to culturally responsive pedagogical practices? Okay, we have some with some experience. Okay, we have more with some experience. We have one that is familiar with it. Okay, great. So thank you guys so much. Now I know what you guys know. So let's kind of talk about culturally responsive, culturally relevant, and reality-based pedagogical practices. So I am going to start off and take you guys back to 1995 with Gloria Ladson-Billings and but that's just good teaching. She is and I introduced her earlier, she is the mother of culturally responsive teaching. And according to Gloria Ladson-Billings, culturally relevant teaching is, Tina, can you read the quote on the slide for me, please?
Hold on one second. My screen, I have it. Just give me a second.
Oh, yes.
Oh, culturally relevant teaching is a pedagogy that empowers students intellectually, socially, emotionally, and politically by using cultural reference to impart knowledge, skills, and attitudes.
Thank you so much, Tina, for reading that. Now, Tina, I want to ask you this. What words stood out to you from that quote? What were some parts of the quote or words that really spoke to you?
Probably empowers. All the other things were the adjectives that help to describe everything, but empowering is the verb that I would
Yes.
focus on.
Thank you so much. Yes, empowering is important. And so, again, culturally relevant teaching has to empower students. Here's the thing, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes. People always say, I don't have time to be culturally relevant or culturally responsive. I have to worry about the standards. I have to worry about this checkpoint that I have to give. I have to teach to the test. Culturally responsive practices, culturally relevant practices is not a checklist or things you have to do. It is a way of life. It is good teaching. And so culturally relevant teaching, it must yield academic success, okay? It is teaching that must help students develop positive ethnic and cultural identities while helping them achieve academically. It is teaching that must develop students' critical consciousness. And I think that's one of the things that people often miss in culturally responsive teaching is develop critical consciousness to challenge the current status quo and current social order, or to recognize, understand, and critique current social inequalities. So from Ladson-Billings' culturally relevant teaching, Geneva Gay, she then coins the term culturally responsive teaching. Allison, can you read Geneva Gay's quote with culturally responsive teaching?
Using the characteristics, experiences, and perspectives of ethnically diverse students as conduits for teaching them more effectively.
Thank you so much. Now, same way that I asked Tina, what are some words that spoke to you, Allison?
Well, I definitely would think of experiences and ethnically diverse students.
Yes, experiences and ethnically diverse students. So here's the thing, culturally relevant teaching and culturally responsive teaching is critical to social emotional learning, right? You cannot have social emotional learning without meeting the cultural, ethnic, linguistic needs of diverse students, okay? And so culturally relevant and culturally responsive teaching is pedagogy and practice. It's how we use strategies and practices to develop our knowledge about cultural diversity and then also help our students develop their knowledge and build their cultural competence in regards to diversity and their peers. It's how we include ethnic and cultural diversity into the curriculum. So earlier we talked about creating these welcoming and affirming spaces where students know that we care about them. We cannot create these spaces if students do not have the opportunity to see themselves in these spaces, right? Community cannot happen if students do not feel that all of them, that their whole person, their whole being is welcomed into our space, are humanized into our space, right? Culturally responsive teaching also helps us communicate with ethnically diverse students and speak their language and communicate with their families. And then it also provides us with these tangible tools to embrace ethnic diversity into how we deliver instruction, okay? So the next part of culturally responsive teaching and a transformative lesson is bringing our students' realities into our classroom. So building on the work of Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings and Dr. Geneva Gay is Dr. Christopher Emdin, and he is the founder of the pedagogical theory, reality pedagogy, okay? Can I get Catherine Ford, can you read what reality pedagogy is?
An approach to teaching and learning that has a primary goal of meeting each student on his or her cultural and emotional turf by making the local experiences of the student visible and creating context where there is a role reversal that positions the student as the expert in their own teaching and learning.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'm going to give you guys what Dr. Emdin calls his 7 strategies for effective teaching. Okay. And these 7 strategies are bedded into this concept of transformative lessons. So the first one is cognitive dialogues. And what cognitive dialogues are structured exchanges where students and teachers develop strategies for instruction that focus on students' social, emotional, and academic needs. So what does this look like? I was talking to my husband today about, my husband is an English teacher, and I was speaking to him today about an upcoming lesson. I said, what are you working on? And he said, oh, we're teaching syntax and diction. And I said, and how's it going? And he's like, well, the students are not showing up. And I said, so have you asked your students, have you said, hey, I need to teach syntax and diction. How can I do that? Have you asked them that? Or did you just design the lesson? Have you asked your students, hey, what can you do? What do you want to be able to do with this lesson on syntax and diction, right? So we have to keep in mind, our students are experiencing real world problems. There are real issues out there that they want to learn about. There are real interests out there that they have. There are real passions out there that they want to explore. Imagine a lesson and imagine a classroom where we are actively and intentionally engaging students through what they are interested and concerned about, right? So I threw out there to my husband, I said, well, if one of the issues, just hypothetically, in your community is that students' families are struggling to find food or access to food banks, right? How about you teach diction and syntax through having your students write a letter to Walmart or write a letter to Albertsons requesting access to canned goods and dried food. If you want to teach syntax and diction and poetry, I said, have you brought in diverse voices of poets who are speaking about what it's like to grow up in a community or to experience hunger or to something that is similar to what your students are experiencing? Have you thought about maybe having your students write a poem that they can share out via social media to raise this awareness about how the pandemic is currently affecting them? The second 7C, one of the second 7 C's of effective teaching is co-teaching, right? So with co-teaching, our students should be able to, all of us possess some knowledge about something. When students come into your classroom, do they have the opportunity not only to teach their peers, but to teach you what they know? So co-teaching is not only just about saying, hey, go in and I'm going to give you this lesson that I've designed, and you're going to go and teach this content or piece of something that you've learned to your peers. Co-teaching is also about welcoming students in and saying, hey, Tina, come here. help me design this lesson. These are the standards that I have to teach. How can I make sure that the lesson meets these standards, but is in a way that you learn? Okay, thank you, Tina. We've designed this lesson. Now, Tina, guess what? You're going to teach this lesson next week. We've designed it. You're going to teach it. I have stepped back into the role of support and facilitator, and now I've given the students agency. The next C is cosmopolitanism. And so similar to the cogenitive dialogues and co-teaching, is students have become active participants in how their learning space functions. So everything about your face-to-face classroom or your virtual classroom, the students have designed that. So your Google Classroom, how it's laid out, your students have set the Google Classroom up for you. They've created the outline. The handouts that you pass out, your students have decided how those handouts or how those tech tools that we're going to use, how they look and how they function. If you send a newsletter out to your parents, your students design that newsletter, right? The welcome messages that you are going to send out to your class or before class, or the messages that you send to students after class, your students have had an active role in designing those. So in this community, there is no hierarchy. There is no, I'm the teacher, I'm the expert of knowledge, and I sit up here. It's everybody has a shared responsibility in the way that this learning space functions, okay? The next thing is context. We want to bring students' context into our classroom. And so we are embedding ourselves not only in students' communities, but we're bringing the communities into the classroom. And so what does that look like? That looks like, okay, I do breakout rooms a lot, and I have a lesson where I'm going to use breakout rooms for students to have a structured discussion. How about you bring in a parent to facilitate the discussion in that breakout room? Or I have designed an awesome tour where we're going to go to the Museum of African American History, and students are going to explore the different parts of the museum. Maybe have your parent or ask a parent to come in and be one of the tour guides, the virtual tour guides. Parents have so much knowledge. Community members have so much knowledge. How are you bringing in the parents and the community members and using their funds of knowledge to do something in your classroom? For example, if we were teaching a math lesson, you could bring in a local business owner to talk about how they structure a budget, right? What are some things that go into operating a business? But then vice versa, if a business is struggling right now to remain open during a pandemic, maybe have your students design a campaign to gain support for that business. So it's that bringing that context together and flipping by putting your students out in the community, but also bringing the community into your classroom. Then your content. With your content, showing students what it looks like to grapple with the subject and deliver content, not as the master, but as a vulnerable learner, right? The whole goal is we want to show vulnerability. And so the way this looks is I need to design a lesson on a topic that I'm not really familiar with, but I'm going to show students how I go through that process. What does it look like not to be the total holder or possessor of knowledge? And then also see what students know about that topic and what they can deposit into me. So we're not just relying on this banking model of we're the ones that are constantly putting information into students, but students are also constantly putting information into us as well. And they're seeing the way and the processes that we go through to absorb and obtain information. The next C is competition. Competition is healthy. In academic spaces, we usually look at competition as a way that, we are pitting one group of students against another group of students. But allowing competition and students to compete with one another can lead to positive emotions. It can foster collaboration. It can make content relevant, right? If you think about it, in a lot of our cultures and communities, competition is celebrated and embraced because it leads to connections. How many of you guys have seen after a basketball game or a football game, majority of the players, they hang out with each other on their free time, right? If you are into hip hop culture, you know anything about hip hop culture, rap battles are a way to their competition, but from that, it is fostering that collaboration and that healthy emotion. And in our spaces, students have to have that way of showing emotion. And then the last thing is curation. Curation. Right now, I'm recording this Zoom session and I'm going to go back and I'm going to reflect on it. I'm going to reflect on my teaching practices. I'm going to ask you guys at the end to give me a survey and give me feedback. So, how are you curating your lessons? How are you collecting, annotating, and preserving information and reflecting on these artifacts so that way you can grow in your teacher practices? Okay, so those are the 7 C's of effective teaching. And then those are the 3 pedagogical practices and theories: culturally relevant teaching, culturally responsive teaching, and reality pedagogy, that pretty much centers the work that I do when I work with educators. It's just helping them create these culturally relevant, responsive, and rich learning environments where all students can thrive. Okay, so there exists, however, some serious misconceptions about what culturally responsive teaching is and what it's not. And that's one of the things that I did kind of mention earlier. Okay, so there is this idea that, okay, I can't be culturally responsive or culturally relevant or even bring my students' realities into the classroom because I have so much other stuff that I have to work on. Remember that culturally responsive teaching is a mindset. It's not a checklist. It's not a series of steps to follow so that way you can increase academic success with culturally, linguistically, economically diverse students. Okay. And the reason why I say it's not a series of checklists, because if you don't have the mindset that all students can and will succeed, it doesn't matter what checklist you have. If you don't believe that this is capable for every student that you serve, then it's not going to happen in your classroom. So first, it's about developing that mindset that everyone is teachable and reachable. Everyone can and will learn. It's not an addition to or supplement to. Okay. So it's not we're talking about blacks or we're talking about scientists. And in addition to talking about scientists altogether, I'm going to focus on 2 Black scientists. The Black scientists should already be in your instruction, right? Or I'm going to teach this content, but in addition to this content, I'm going to see how we can engage students' community. No, students' community should already be into the content. There is no curriculum to be culturally responsive, okay? It is not exclusive to diversity and inclusion or multiculturalism. All of that is embedded into it. Yes, so CLEAD stands for culturally, linguistically, ethnically, economically, and disability abled students, okay, or diverse students. And so it's not it's exclusive to multiculturalism or inclusion or diversity. Multiculturalism, inclusion, and diversity should be embedded in that, okay? Every student every day should be able to feel esteemed, valued, heard, empowered in your classroom, because that's what then empowers them. And that's what takes us to the root of what culturally relevant teaching is. Okay. And it's not only restricted to hallways, holidays, and heroes. Okay. So it's not just happens in certain times. Now, here's the one thing that gets a lot of people: culturally relevant, culturally responsive teaching is not only for culturally, linguistically, ethnically, or economically diverse students. We all have a culture, right? So I would be wrong to sit here and assume that every last one of you guys that I can see on this screen right now, because you guys are all white women, I would be wrong to assume that you guys all had the same cultural values and identities and lived and shared experiences. Okay. And so, but that's sometimes what happens. White students have culture too. And so because of that, that's why it goes back to getting to know all of your students and know how they identify. See, here's the thing: culture is not stagnant. It's not just, oh, this is culture and it never changes. It's so fluid and it changes every day. It changes every day. I may identify with the hip hop culture today, And then I may identify with the Christian culture tomorrow. But then one thing that we also have to consider is how the Christian culture and the hip hop culture come together to influence my identity, right? How do those two things shape who I am and how I navigate the world? So that's why we have to put together or put away that notion of color blindness, right? Because we have to see students. If we don't see students, we don't see their experiences. So we can't just say, oh, I see all of my students. No, we have to see each and every individual student and what they need to thrive and be successful. So culture responsive teaching, again, just to kind of hit these points, it's a mindset. And it's a mindset that I am going to help culturally, linguistically, economically, ethnically diverse students build the capacity to be successful academically. Okay, so it is whatever I need to give them to thrive and be successful, I am going to give that. It is this understanding that all students can and will and have the capacity to do rigorous skills and rigorous work. And in my space, I am going to build them up to do those rigorous skills and to perform that rigorous task because they can do it. And you know why they can do it? Because we expect them to do it. You know, I said this one time to an educator friend of mine, and they're like, oh my God, what do you mean? I said, do you know why a lot of students are not showing up to class? Do you know why the number one reason a lot of students are not showing up to class? Is because they know we don't expect them to. Yes, they have things going on. But if I knew that Miss Tina was looking for me and Miss Tina was going, she was going to come find me if I didn't show up, then I would be there. You know why a lot of students don't turn? And I'll speak from the perspective of my son. My son is in high school. And you know what he said? He said, oh, I don't turn on my camera. They don't ask me to. But we want to say, oh, the kids, they don't turn on their cameras. Have you asked them? Yeah, and if you ask them, some of them will tell you, oh, Miss Allison, I don't have Wi-Fi. I can't turn my camera. That's understandable. But we have lowered our expectations because of the situation. And because we've lowered our expectations because of the situation, students have now lowered their expectations. They're not going to perform because they know we don't expect them to perform. So culture responsive teaching says that I am going to hold you to those high regards, every student, high regards, high expectations. But not only am I going to hold you to them, I'm going to support you and build you up to get there. Because you can and you will do it. It's understanding the importance of culture to learning. Okay, those cultural frames of reference. You have to know your students to know how they identify and what culture they identify with. And how can you bring those identifications into your classroom? Okay. And remember, so culture is something that it's constantly changing every day. And that's why we take it back to the importance of building relationship and building intentional community building opportunities every day, so that way we are continuing to gain a better understanding of what cultures are our students identifying with right now. Okay. A lot of your students right now, hip hop culture is what they are engaged in and what they are embracing. And so how are you exposing yourself to those cultural references to bring it into your learning? It is rejecting this notion of a dominant culture and cultural norms. In your space, students have to be able to be themselves and be themselves authentically. Okay. We cannot police students and how they learn, what's going on in their home. If your kid shows up in pajama pants, guess what? They showed up. They showed up. And you can just say, hey, I know you haven't had a chance to get dressed. You can keep your camera on and stay with us, or you can turn your camera off until you're ready. It's up to you. But they showed up. So it's not us rejecting these dominant notions of respectability and what's right and what's wrong according to whose standards on our students. And then lastly, it's giving every student what they need to be successful. So that's when it comes back to knowing your students and what can I do today to increase your opportunity to be academically successful, because all students can and will learn. It is just culturally responsive teaching, culturally relevant teaching. It is just good teaching altogether. Okay. So how do we create this culturally relevant, culturally responsive, real transformative lessons? So the first thing and the first key, okay, is that you cannot reach or teach every student every day if you do not bring their cultures, communities, home lives, their unique voices, their experiences, and their realities into the classroom. We have to prepare our students to serve as agents of change in their communities, in their schools, and throughout the world. They want to see change happening. Okay, the students who are out there, the students that are in our classroom are the same students who are out there at the protests, they're out there writing letters, they're out there using social media to share their voices and share their passions and their concerns about issues. And it is our responsibility in our classroom to give them the tools that they need to initiate change. Okay, so how do I teach my content? You may be wondering, how do I teach my content and engage students in a relevant, responsive, and realistic way? And the answer is authentic instruction opportunities, authentic instruction. So I want you to think about this. When you hear authentic instruction or authentic learning, what is it? Okay. What is it? How does it look? How does it sound, or how does it feel? Think about that. When you hear authentic instruction or authentic learning, in your opinion, how does it look, sound, or feel? All right, Lindsay, are you? Hey, Nancy, welcome. How are you? Okay, I think Nancy may have stepped away as well. So I'll go to Lindsay. Lindsay, are you still with us?
I am.
How are you?
I'm hanging in here. How about you?
I'm doing well. Lindsay, can you tell us what, in your opinion, what is authentic learning experiences? How does it look, sound, or feel?
Well, I'm also an English teacher, like you mentioned, your husband is. And so the first thing that pops into my mind is what do you mean by authentic?
Okay. I like that. And we're gonna talk about that. I'm gonna go ahead and I will reach out to Allison. Allison, authentic learning. In your opinion, how does it look, sound, or feel?
I'm not sure. I just think it's me not just talking at the students, but responding to what they're doing and what they're saying.
Okay, I thank you so much. I like that. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Allison. I'm going to go to Catherine Ford. Catherine, when you think of authentic instruction, what, in your opinion, what does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like?
Authentic instruction has to have something that the students can connect to. I can get up there and I can give them every fact they need to know to pass that EOC at the end of the year. But if they can't make a connection to it in their own lives and in their own world, it's just a list of facts to them.
Yes, thank you. You guys all, thank you so much, Lindsay and Allison, for just being vulnerable enough to say, I don't know. I have those questions, because that's what this space is all about, and that's what we're here for. So I appreciate that. So let's talk about what authentic instruction first is not. It is not a sit and get, okay? It is not a lecture or you watch a series of videos, or here are some self-paced modules. Here are some worksheets that I've turned into Google Forms or Google Docs. It's not multiple choice tests. It's not teaching to the test, okay? It's not coming straight from a textbook, and it is not monocultural or centering one dominant view or one voice, okay? Authentic instruction is culturally responsive instruction. And if we get to the root word of authentic, authentic means to be real. So if students cannot identify or solve real life problems that are relevant to them through the content that you're teaching, then we are not providing authentic instructional opportunities that are reaching and teaching students. Okay, so it's not just the lecture or the watching videos again or the Google Forms, but what it is it is student-centered. It's an inquiry-based approach to learning. It is multicultural and it is transformative. And we're going to look right now at what is necessary for a lesson to be authentic and for it to be transformative. Okay. So, one of the things that I want you guys to note is authentic instruction is relevant, it is responsive to students' needs, and it is realistic. Okay. So, I'm going to give you guys on your screen the characteristics. Here's some characteristics. And the characteristics are what should be embedded into lessons that are transformational and authentic. Okay. So go ahead and I want you to take about 3 minutes to review the characteristics of authentic instruction. Okay. So go ahead, take about 3 minutes. One minute and 30 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds. All righty. So I really would have loved to use this opportunity for us to go through some examples of authentic lessons, but since we didn't have that opportunity, I wanted to make sure that you left here with an understanding of some of the characteristics and components of authentic lesson. Okay. I know that when we look at what makes a lesson authentic, if we go back to student-centered and inquiry-based, where the students are deciding what they want to learn and how they want to learn, and they have the opportunity to explore. Many of us are familiar with that. But the last two components, multicultural and transformative, that's where our understandings might be limited. And so that's why I wanted to expose you to the key characteristics of a multicultural and transformative curriculum through the scholarship of James Banks, Paul Gorski, Sonia Nieto, who all are researchers and scholars in the field of multicultural education and equity-based practices, okay? So what I want you guys to do is I want you to drop in the chat one characteristic that really stood out to you. In the chat, one characteristic that stood out to you.
You mean from the document we were reading?
Yes, from the document that you reviewed, what is one characteristic, and thank you so much, Tina, for that clarifying question. One characteristic of a multicultural and transformative curriculum, and I'll put the document back up for you. What is one characteristic that stood out to you? To vary the teaching and learning materials, yes. All materials include diverse groups, yes. Perspectives focusing on everyday people, not just the outliers or the heroes in the holidays. Remember, it's not addition to, it's not supplement, it is embedded every day. You guys have to think about this. How many of our students walk into a classroom every day and never see, hear, or learn about a positive representation of their culture or community? And so what this does to the student is it creates this deficit mindset in them that people from cultures and communities like them, they've never done anything worth talking about or mentioning, right? And so now you want me to engage with your instruction in your lesson. Why would I when people from my hood, they don't do that? We don't act like that. We don't talk like that. That's because we have whitewashed, to be frank. Who is worthy of being focused on, mentioned, and celebrated? And so when we start to bring the beauty and the joy, because people can say, oh, yeah, I talk about the civil rights movement. I talk about the Spanish American War, the Mexican American War. But that's always the oppressive part, right? Why are we not talking about the parts that need to be celebrated? Or when we do talk about heroes, it's the same hero. I know about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, they did that. And then when we do talk about them, we don't really fully talk about it in truth. Okay, it's always breezed through, but just think about what that would do to a student's self-esteem and identity, just to come in and see throughout the campus, throughout the classroom, what it is like to exist and be humanized from a asset-based perspective. That will result in academic achievement because they know that their ancestors before them were able to do it. And so because their ancestors before them were able to do it, so can they. And so what I want you guys to do is, if you want to respond to the question, how do we design authentic and transformative learning experiences for students? Drop your name in the chat. That is the question that I want to talk about. How do we design authentic and transformative experiences for our students? So if you want to respond to that question, drop your name in the chat for me, please. Okay. Lindsay, thank you. Lindsay, how do we design authentic and transformative learning experiences for students?
One of the ways that I found best for myself is just trying things, taking risks, knowing
Yes.
that you might try something you've never done before and it is a disaster. And you come back the next day and you say, all right, kids, we're not going to do that again because that wasn't good, but we're going to do something else.
Yes, taking risks, because when we take risks, our students are vulnerable enough to take risks. Catherine, what about you? How do we design authentic and transformative learning experiences for our students? You're on mute.
I believe that really goes back to that relationship. We have to know who our students are. You know, I can tell you in my classroom that I have several Hispanic students, several African American students, and a couple of white students. And I can tell you that I have lots of teen moms and dads, but I can also, two that I've had for a couple of years, while they're great friends, their experience is completely different. They're both Hispanic, they're both teen moms, but the level of support that they have is different. Their whole background is different. And so we have to recognize that just because they're a certain ethnicity we don't pigeonhole them into this little background because that's where they come from, because their ethnicity doesn't tell us everything about them. And so we really have to know those students and what their vulnerabilities are, be vulnerable with them, be open and honest with them, and then take those risks.
Thank you. And Kathy McCoy, you dropped your name in the chat.
Well, so I was listening to what everyone said and looking at that list and whatever. And I teach elementary. I don't know if I am in the minority. It sounds like everyone else maybe works with elementary. Okay, so we have a unit in our social studies that all the teachers seem to hate except me, which is on government. And in third grade, well, all the grades that I've taught with it, I've loved, but this one was on groups getting, fighting for rights. Mm-hmm. And I have always loved that unit, but I noticed this year, especially because I also brought in, so the four it mentions, it talks about particularly was like Alice Paul, who I really focused on because of the 100 years of women's right, or women being able to vote, women's suffrage. And it talked about Rosa Parks, and it talked about Susan B. Anthony, it talked about Martin Luther King Jr. and Cesar Chavez. But I tried to, especially like Alice Paul and Cesar Chavez, bring them in and talk about what can we do now, because at this point, especially Black Lives Matter and other groups right now really reaching for equality and equity. And my kids had a lot to say, and I kind of let them kind of take the lead there. I brought in other picture books that we read about people's lives. And I also tried to make sure they understood, yeah, it's not perfect right now, because I feel like a lot of our textbooks are like, look what we've accomplished and we're done. Instead of, no, we're still, I always tell them when we know better, we do better. I mean, those people didn't know what we know now. Like, they thought what they were doing was okay, but aren't we lucky that we have learned since then and we're continuing to learn, is kind of how I base it. But they were really excited, and they have brought up, especially my girls, Alice Paul repeatedly. And I don't know how much of that was my influence, as far as I said I admired Alice Paul, but I have noticed that my girls, like on a quick writes, people you admire, Alice Paul pops up, because I think that they could relate to that and felt like, I mean, even though we feel like we've come so far with gender equality, they still notice, they still are aware, that it's not yet, we're still fighting. So that as I heard people talk, that was what came to my mind.
Thank you everybody. And the one thing that I want you guys to emphasize and hit on, authentic and transformative learning experiences start with student interest. It starts with, what are you interested in? What do you want to learn? What do you need right now? And how can I infuse that into my content, my processes, and my products? How can I infuse what you want to learn, what is real and relevant to you, into my content, my processes, how I teach, what I teach, my pedagogical practices, and what you guys are doing with that? you guys all seem to have those relationships with your students where they're coming to you and saying, hey, I want to learn about this. I need to learn about this. And now it's about what do we do with that? But again, it goes back to the key of building those relationships in that community and implementing some of those 7 C's of effective teaching. And so, when we look at authentic lessons and authentic learning experiences, one of the things that I want you guys to know is that our learning environments and the opportunities that we provide in our learning environments is very key. Again, authentic and learning environments and authentic lessons happen when students are able to come in a space where they know that they are embraced, they will be empowered, they will be educated, and each and every day, they will show up and know that we are meeting their social, emotional, cultural, linguistic, all of their needs are going to be met in our classrooms. And so, learning environment is key to creating these learning experiences that are authentic and transformational, because students are not going to be willing to take risks when they know that they're not going to be met wholly or empowered wholly in our courses or in our classrooms to take those risks. Okay. And so our pedagogy, it has to target the whole child and provide each and every student what they need to thrive outside of our classroom and outside of our inside our classrooms and schools. So it speaking to the whole child is setting them up for success, not only in our schools, but outside of our schools. And so educating and empowering the whole child cannot be accomplished again through this colorblind approach. You have to see your students and not just see them surface level, but really see who they are and connect with them to go beyond the surface and know what is important to them, what they're passionate about, and what they want to learn. Okay. It can only authentic lessons and transformative lessons can only be accomplished through culturally responsive and inclusive practices and learning experience that value, that affirm, that educate and empower every student. Okay. Next webinar, we're going to talk January 9th is the second part to this webinar. And we're going to talk about how do you develop loving communities that lead to academic success for all students. Okay. So as we close out, I just want to talk about what are the 4 components of a real lesson plan? Okay. And I want to be able to provide you with this tool to guide you in your lesson planning. Okay. So the 4 components of a real lesson plan is daily community building. Okay. Whether it's in a warm up or an icebreaker or how you hook the students into your lesson, it should be a way to build community. Okay. So if you're going to teach a lesson on Alice Paul, maybe your community builder could be talk about some women who have made change in your life. Right. And that way you are building that opportunity for them to talk. Okay. The next thing is your content, your processes and products are relevant and responsive to the student's reality. So what you're teaching, yes, you have to teach certain content, but how are you going to bring your students' realities and communities and cultures into how you teach that content? Okay, or exactly what content you teach. There are amazing cultures and communities that have done some great things throughout our country, throughout the literary canon. So different great mathematicians, scientists out there that you can bring into your instruction that represents your students and how they see themselves. Okay, a real lesson. Students can collaborate to identify, explore, solve, and present on issues relevant to them and to their communities. Every subject, every age group, no matter what you teach, you can create an experience where students can identify and solve issues. But it goes back to knowing your students. With their final products and how they produce information, students should have that voice and they should have that choice to say how they want to demonstrate that they know and understand something. So we shouldn't just have this is the one way that you have to present a final product or present learning. Let the students decide how they want to present a final product or present a learning. And, my son, he did an activity the other day where he had to explore Italy. And the teacher gave him the freedom of, oh, well, no, she didn't. She gave him limits on, oh, you can write about it, or you can write an essay on it, or you can cook a recipe and bring it to class. And so I told him, I said, well, how about this? Email her and ask, since you can't really bring food into classrooms right now, email her and ask her, can you make one of those TikTok style videos of people making meals? And so he asked her and she said, yeah, try it out. And he made one of those TikTok style videos, those influencer style videos of him cooking an Italian dish. And she loved it. She wanted to show it to everybody. And I said, you see, that's what happens. He came up with that idea, or we came up with it together, but that's what happens when he had that choice and that voice to advocate for himself. And then in our classrooms, learning is differentiated. Okay. So students have that say in what they want to learn, how they want to learn. They give feedback to us and they get relevant feedback from us, feedback that is timely and it meets their needs. Okay. And students in our academic spaces, they receive everything that they need, not just to survive or to exist, but to thrive. Okay. So as we close out this session, I hope that you guys have gained just an entry point and some information, some tools that you can take back with you to evaluate your lesson plans and your learning experiences through a lens of authenticity and transformation. And so as a closeout, I want to know, what are some of your key takeaways, or what questions do you still have about designing real lessons that are going to lead to transformation? Okay. Hi, Tracy. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. I just messed up on the time and realized the
No.
difference.
Oh no, you are perfectly fine. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to talk about how you can access the recording of this webinar in a few minutes. So yeah, hang around.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, icebreakers, warm-ups, yes. I'm going to connect to who the students are with task and the curriculum, yes. There are a lot of realistic ways to be responsive to the students' culture, yes. Great, you guys have some great responses there. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Lindsay. Catherine, it really caused me to reflect on how things have been going this year and how I want to change it up. More icebreakers is one of those things. Yes. Allison, ask the students, what do you want to do? Yes. And how do you want to learn? And then Tina says, build community every day. Remember, the whole goal of the icebreakers, the warm-ups, the building community, and so that way you can tap into those cultural frames of reference, how students learn, what they want to learn, what is close to them and important to them, and how you can use that in your instruction. So thank you guys so much. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this out. But before I close this out, I wanted to give you guys the invite to join the Twisted Teaching community. So every month, I do a webinar. And like I said, next month on January 9th will be part 2 to this webinar. And so my goal through Twisted Teaching is to help build educators' capacity and efficacy to be culturally responsive educators who can reach and teach all students. And so I do that, and I support educators mainly through digital content and content creation. I also host professional developments for educators, but I like to give educators that one-on-one experience so that way I can meet them where they are and help them grow to where they want to be. And so every week I am creating, if you guys see me on social media, you follow my YouTube channel, every week I am creating a digital resource for educators to use in their classrooms to build those communities, to push authenticity and authentic learning experiences and promote authentic learning experiences in their classrooms. I am doing monthly webinars, book studies, office hours, self-paced courses. And so through the Twisted Teaching community, you get access pretty much to me. Okay. And so I'm going to drop the link. And right now I'm offering a special. The Twisted Teaching community membership is usually $25. And so for you guys today who have joined the webinar, I am offering access to the community for $12. And for $12, what you get is you get every resource that has been designed, and it can work in a face-to-face space or a virtual space. It will make sure that you are being relevant, responsive, and realistic with your students, and creating those and implementing those instructional practices that will transform your teaching. Every month I do a webinar, like I said. My next one is January 9th, and we're going to be talking about loving environments. And so not only can you attend a webinar, but if there's something that you want to go back in and see or that you missed, being a part of the Twisted Teacher membership community will give you access to those webinars so that you can have them on demand. You can grab your spot today for the January 9th webinar, and the January 9th webinar will not be promoted to people outside of the Twisted Teaching community. So it's really only for people in Twisted Teaching community, because I want to make sure that I'm available to you. In addition to the webinars that I put on, you also have the opportunity to talk or to make a suggestion about what webinar you would like me to focus on. So if there was something we talked about today that you want to delve deeper into, then you have that opportunity to say, hey, can you talk about this webinar topic? I would love to just delve deeper into that topic. Can you go over that? We are doing a book study. So my book, Real Love, Strategies for Reaching Students When They See No Way Out, it is out. And January 23rd, this book talks about my personal experience, my professional practices and experiences, and my pedagogical practices, where we really go into culturally relevant, responsive, and reality teaching. What I'm teaching to you guys today is from the heart. When you talk about a student who has faced so many traumatic experiences in life, and it was teachers who reached me, that was me. My mom and my dad growing up were both drug addicts who spent majority of my life in and out of prison. And it was educators who stepped into my life and who got real with me and gave me the love that I need, that helped me get to where I can stand in front of you guys today and tell you the transformational power of teachers in general, and the transformational power of being reached and taught every day. Also, and I think this is one of the greatest advantages, is you get that one-to-one access to me and that one-to-one coaching from me. So Tina, if you have a lesson that you're designing, go ahead and click my calendar link and say, hey, Alexis, can you jump in and on Saturday and look at this lesson with me? And I will jump in, or I'll send somebody on my team to meet with you, Tina, and we're going to go through and we're going to look at the different components of that lesson to make sure that it's real. And then every webinar is turned into an online course, and I design specific online courses only for members in my community. If you're in the state of Texas, you can get CPE hours for the courses that you participate in. So I wanted to throw that out there to you, so that way, if you're interested in becoming a Twisted Teaching member, you can today. And then if you want to grab my book, I'll also drop that link in the chat for you as well. My book is Real Love, Strategies for Reaching Students When They See No Way Out. And again, on January 23rd, we are going to start a book study where we are talking about what does real love in the classroom look like. Okay, so I'm dropping that to you in the chat. And then before you guys leave, if you can just go ahead and give me some feedback on today's session, and you'll also have the opportunity to suggest an upcoming webinar, I would greatly appreciate that. And again, I thank you and I appreciate everyone for joining us today. And when you have completed the survey, you can stay around and chat with me, or you can just give me a big thumbs up. I understand it's Saturday morning and we want to get out, enjoy the weather, get some rest, catch up on some shows. So I definitely understand. And I appreciate you coming today.
Alexis, I'm on a phone, so I don't even know where the chat or the survey or anything is.
Oh yeah, let me go ahead and if you want to stay and meet afterwards, I'd love to catch up with you, Tracy.
Okay.
Awesome.